7 bruises. The green dress will hide 6 of them. For the last one, keep your hair over your shoulder.
7. My sister-in-law whispered as she pressed her thumb beside the dark mark on my upper arm. 7 bruises. The green dress will hide 6 of them. For the last one, keep your hair over your shoulder. Then the front door opened. My husband was standing there with a suitcase in one hand and a look on his face I had never seen before. Hello, my name is Claire Bennett. I was 32 years old, 7 months pregnant, and living in a beautiful house outside Richmond, Virginia, when my marriage nearly became the scene of a crime no one was supposed to notice. Until that afternoon, I had spent 5 weeks pretending everything was normal. I smiled during video calls. I told my husband, Daniel, that the pregnancy was tiring but peaceful. I blamed the shadows under my eyes on heartburn and the stiffness in my voice on poor sleep. The truth was that I had not been sleeping much at all. Daniel's younger sister, Vanessa, had moved into our guest room after claiming her apartment had flooded. At first, she arrived with 2 suitcases, an expensive candle, and a sweet voice. She promised she would stay only 10 days. By the end of the first week, she was opening my mail. By the second, she was telling the housekeeper what rooms I was allowed to use. By the third, she had taken my car keys because she said I was too emotional to drive. And by the 5th week, she was counting the bruises she had helped put on my body. Daniel was supposed to be in Seattle for 3 more days. His construction company was negotiating a major hospital contract, and he had been working almost nonstop. Vanessa knew his schedule better than I did. That was why she had chosen that Friday for a family dinner. Daniel's mother, 2 uncles, and the company's private attorney were coming at 7. Vanessa told me it was a celebration for the hospital deal. It was not. She had planned to accuse me of stealing nearly $200,000 from Daniel's company. The green dress was not meant to make me look beautiful. It was meant to make me look calm, healthy, and guilty. When Daniel stepped inside, Vanessa's hand was still around my arm. I was sitting at the bottom of the staircase because my legs had started shaking. A tray of broken glass lay on the floor beside me. Vanessa had knocked it from my hands after ordering me to carry drinks upstairs. Daniel looked at the glass, then at me, then at Vanessa's fingers. "What are you doing?" he asked. Vanessa let go so quickly that my arm fell against my stomach. "She dropped a tray," she said. I was checking whether she cut herself. Daniel's eyes moved to the purple marks on my skin. "Those aren't cuts." I pulled my sleeve down. "I'm fine." The lie came automatically. Daniel dropped his suitcase. "Claire, look at me." I did not. "She has been dramatic all day. I told her to rest, but she refuses to listen." That was when our housekeeper, Rosa, appeared in the kitchen doorway. Rosa had worked for Daniel's family for 12 years. She rarely raised her voice, but that afternoon she spoke clearly. "Mrs. Bennett did try to rest." Vanessa turned. Rosa continued. "You made her clean the upstairs bathroom after she became dizzy." "That is not true. I saw you lock the bedroom door from the outside." Daniel stared at his sister. Vanessa laughed once, too loudly. Rosa misunderstood. Claire was having one of her episodes. "My what?" I asked. Vanessa looked at me as though I had ruined a rehearsal. Daniel crouched in front of me. "Why is there a lock on our bedroom door?" I finally met his eyes. "Because she didn't want me leaving before tonight." The house became very quiet. Daniel's face changed, but Vanessa recovered quickly. "She is confused," she said. "You need to see the messages she has been sending. She thinks people are following her. She thinks the company accounts are being manipulated." "They are," I said. Daniel looked at me. Vanessa reached for her phone. "This is exactly what I mean." Before she could unlock it, I said, "Ask her why my prenatal appointment was canceled on Tuesday." Daniel stood. Vanessa's expression tightened. "She canceled it herself?" "No," Rosa said. "I heard you call the clinic." Vanessa snapped. "Stay out of this." Rosa did not move. Daniel looked from his sister to me. "Why would Vanessa cancel your appointment?" I answered with the question I have been afraid to say aloud. "Because the doctor would have seen the bruises." Daniel's jaw went still. For 1 second, I thought he might shout. Instead, he picked up his phone and called my obstetrician. The clinic confirmed that a woman identifying herself as my family assistant had canceled the appointment. She had said I was traveling out of state. I had not left the house in 11 days. Daniel ended the call slowly. Vanessa stepped closer to him. "You're letting her manipulate you." He moved between us. "No, I'm asking questions I should have asked weeks ago." A sharp pressure tightened across my lower stomach. I gasped. Daniel reached me before I slid from the step. The pain faded after 30 seconds, but it left sweat along my neck. "We're going to the hospital," he said. Vanessa blocked the hallway. "You cannot leave yet. The attorney will be here in less than 2 hours." Daniel stared at her. Why do you care whether my pregnant wife leaves before a family dinner? Vanessa's face lost its color. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out a small flash drive. Because tonight was never a dinner. For Vanessa looked at the drive. For the first time since she moved into our house, she looked afraid. I handed it to Daniel. She planned a confession. He frowned. A confession to what? To stealing from your company. Vanessa lunged for the drive. Daniel caught her wrist. And I said the words that changed everything. The money is missing, Daniel. But I didn't take it. At the hospital, the baby's heartbeat was strong, but my doctor said the tightening I felt could become early labor if the stress continued. She also documented every bruise. There were 7 on my arms, 2 near my ribs, and 1 on my thigh. Not all of them came from Vanessa directly. Some came from doors she shoved closed while I was passing through. One came from the edge of a kitchen island when she grabbed my phone and pushed me backward. Another came when she pulled a chair away as I was trying to sit. She had learned how to hurt me without leaving marks that looked like an attack. A bruise from fingers can be explained. A bruise from furniture can be blamed on clumsiness. And a pregnant woman who cries too easily can be called unstable. Daniel sat beside the hospital bed, staring at the photographs the nurse had taken. I left you with her, he said. I looked at him. You left me after I told you she was taking over the house. He lowered his head. 3 weeks earlier. I had told him that Vanessa had collected our bank cards for bookkeeping. He had laughed and said she liked feeling useful. 2 weeks earlier, I told him the security code had changed, and no one had given me the new one. He said Vanessa was probably updating the alarm system. 1 week earlier, I told him I could not find my passport or my social security card. He said I had probably moved them during the nursery renovation. Every warning had reached him. He had simply chosen the explanation that required the least action. I'm sorry, he said. I don't need sorry yet. He looked up. I need you to understand what she was building. I told him about the first suspicious email. It had arrived 18 days earlier from the accounting department at Bennett Medical Builders, Daniel's company. The message thanked me for approving a payment to a consulting firm called Blue Briar Strategies. The amount was $18,750. I had never heard of Blue Briar. I had never approved payment. Before my pregnancy, I worked as a forensic bookkeeper. I specialized in finding internal fraud inside family-owned businesses. Daniel's father used to joke that I could smell a false invoice through a locked door. When I asked Vanessa about Blue Briar, she smiled and said it was probably a software mistake. The next morning, my access to the company accounting portal stopped working. 2 days later, a second payment appeared, then a third. Each one was just below $20,000. By the time I started keeping a private record, the total had reached $187,500. Every payment carried my electronic approval, every invoice listed, community relations consulting, and every file had been uploaded while Daniel was traveling. Why didn't you call me? He asked. I did. He went silent. I reminded him of the evening I called while he was entering a meeting. I told him I thought someone was using my credentials. Vanessa had already spoken to him that morning. She had told him I was anxious, overwhelmed, and struggling with pregnancy hormones. You said we would discuss it when you got home, I said. Daniel closed his eyes. I continued. After that call, Vanessa stopped pretending. She took my phone for 6 hours and returned it, with the passcode changed. She told the staff I had been advised not to drive. She forwarded my mail to her room. Then she showed me a draft letter on Daniel's company's stationery. The letter said I had secretly authorized payments to a shell company and used the money to prepare to leave my marriage. She told me the family would believe it, I said. She said pregnant women disappear with money every day. Daniel's hands curled into fists. Why would she do this? I looked toward the hospital window. Because Blue Briar belongs to her. He stared at me. I explained how I found it. Vanessa had made one mistake. She used our home printer to produce a shipping label. The label was for a package addressed to a registered agent in Delaware. After she threw the draft into the recycling bin, I photographed it. The tracking number led to incorporation documents for Blue Briar Strategies. The listed owner was not Vanessa. It was me. My name, my date of birth, my old office address, and a scanned copy of my signature. Vanessa had created the company in my identity. Then she had used my stolen accounting credentials to approve payments into an account that appeared to belong to me. When the auditors found the money, I said, they would not find Vanessa. They would find Claire Bennett. Daniel leaned back as though the room had moved beneath him. What is on the flash drive? Copies of the invoices, the company registration, screenshots of login records, audio recordings, and a video from the hallway camera. His eyes widened. We don't have a hallway camera. We do now. Rose's nephew installed a small battery camera inside a smoke detector after Vanessa pushed me into the wall. I had not told Daniel, because I was no longer sure whether he would believe me before warning his sister. That truth hurt him more than anything else I said. The hospital door opened. A woman in a Navy suit entered and introduced herself as Agent Monica Hale from the Virginia State Police Financial Crimes Unit. Daniel looked at me. I said, I contacted her 4 days ago. Vanessa believed I had no way out of the house. She did not know Rosa had mailed a packet of evidence for me. Agent Hale placed a recorder on the table. The dinner scheduled tonight is still happening, she said. Your sister has invited 2 company directors, your corporate attorney, and your mother. Daniel's expression hardened. She planned to accuse Claire in front of all of them. Agent Hale nodded. And we believe she planned to make Mrs. Bennett sign a statement. I felt the baby move beneath my hand. Daniel asked, Can you arrest her? Not yet. We have strong evidence. But we want to identify who helped her create the digital approvals and where the money went. I knew one person had helped her. Someone inside Daniel's company had issued a replacement security token in my name. Only 3 executives had that authority. Daniel, the chief financial officer, and Daniel's uncle, Robert. The dinner was not only Vanessa's trap. It was ours now. My doctor wanted me admitted overnight. I refused to return home, but I agreed to appear by video from the hospital conference room. Daniel wanted to cancel the dinner. Agent Hale advised against it. Vanessa had already sent an email telling everyone there would be serious news regarding Claire's conduct. If the meeting vanished, she might destroy evidence. So at 7 o'clock, while I sat in a hospital chair with a fetal monitor around my stomach, my face appeared on the television in our dining room. Vanessa entered wearing white. She smiled at the camera. Then she saw Daniel standing behind the chair where I should have been sitting. Her smile disappeared. Daniel said, Go ahead, Vanessa. Tell everyone why we're here. She looked around the table. Daniel's mother, Margaret, sat at one end. Uncle Robert sat beside the company lawyer. The chief financial officer joined by video. Vanessa lifted a folder. For months, I have been trying to protect this family from a devastating betrayal. She turned toward the screen. Claire stole from the company. Margaret covered her mouth. Robert shook his head with practiced sadness. Vanessa placed invoices on the table and explained that I had created Blue Briar strategies, approved false consulting fees, and hidden the money in a private account. Then she played a recording of me crying. In the clip, I said, I need money that no one can control. The recording ended there. It did not include the next sentence. For groceries, Vanessa, you canceled every card in my wallet. Vanessa looked into the camera. She has been planning to leave Daniel. I let her finish. Then I said, Show them the confession. Her fingers tightened around the folder. Daniel turned toward her. Claire said you prepared one. Vanessa forced a laugh. I prepared a summary in case she chose to cooperate. Read it? I said she did not. Uncle Robert leaned forward. This is becoming theatrical. Agent Hale's voice came through the speaker. Mr. Bennett, I recommend you remain seated. Robert froze. Vanessa stepped backward. The dining room door opened. 2 investigators entered. And Agent Hale said, Now, Mrs. Bennett, show them the video from Tuesday night. The hallway camera showed Vanessa entering my bedroom at 11:40 p.m. She carried my laptop, a folder, and a small black device. She sat at my desk. She connected the device to the laptop. Then she opened the company portal. The camera could not see the screen clearly, but it recorded her voice. Send me the new code, she said into her phone. A man answered through the speaker. You have 90 seconds before the token expires. Every person in the dining room heard the voice. Daniel did too. He turned slowly toward his uncle. Robert's face became gray. The recording continued. Vanessa said, Once Claire signs tomorrow, this is finished. Robert answered, Make sure Daniel believes she planned to run. He will forgive theft before he forgives humiliation. I had heard that recording 3 days earlier. Even then, I did not understand the entire plan. I thought Vanessa wanted money. I thought Robert wanted to damage my marriage. But the investigation had uncovered something larger. Daniel's company was finalizing a hospital contract worth more than $40 million. If the board discovered internal fraud tied to Daniel's wife, they could remove him as president before the deal closed. Under the company's emergency succession rules, Robert would become acting president. Vanessa would receive part of the stolen money. Robert would take control of the company, and I would carry the blame. Vanessa looked at Robert. You said the camera was disabled. He hissed. You told me the house was secure. Daniel's mother stood so fast her chair struck the wall. Robert. He raised both hands. This is being misunderstood. Agent Hale appeared on the screen beside me. The login used to approve 6 payments came from your office computer, Mr. Bennett. The replacement security token was issued under your authorization. Robert looked toward the door. An investigator moved in front of it. Vanessa's confidence shattered first. "He made me do it," she said. Robert turned on her. "You came to me. You said Daniel was destroying the family. You wanted cash. You promised me 10% of the hospital deal." They began accusing each other so quickly that the attorney told them both to stop speaking. Neither listened. Then Vanessa pointed toward the television. "She is not innocent." I felt a strange calm. "Tell them what I did. You recorded me in a private home. My home. You stole company records. Records carrying my name and signature. You turned Daniel against his family." Daniel stepped forward. "No. You used my trust to isolate my wife." Vanessa stared at him. Then she said something I will never forget. She was temporary. The room went silent. Vanessa looked toward my pregnant stomach on the screen. "The company was ours before she arrived. The house was ours. You were ours." Then she came in with her little accounting degree and made everyone treat her like she was smarter than us. I had always known Vanessa disliked me. I had not known she believed I had stolen her brother simply by marrying him. She continued. "And now she is having the baby that gets everything." Margaret whispered. "What are you talking about?" Robert closed his eyes. That was when I understood there was still another secret. Daniel's father had created a family voting trust before his death. Daniel held the largest share, but if he had a child, part of that voting power would transfer into a protected trust for the child. Robert's influence would shrink. Vanessa's annual distribution would also be reviewed by an independent trustee. My baby's birth was not only a family event. It was a deadline. They needed Danny moved before our daughter was born. Agent Hale asked Robert whether he wanted an attorney. He said nothing. Vanessa looked at Daniel. "You cannot let them arrest me." He stared at her. 5 weeks earlier, he might have protected her. 5 days earlier, he might have asked for time. That night, he said, "I'm not stopping them." The investigators took both Vanessa and Robert into custody for questioning. The formal charges came later, after warrants were executed and bank records were examined. But before Vanessa left, she turned toward the screen. "You think you won?" I looked directly at her. "No, I think you finally lost control of the story." After the dining room emptied, Daniel came to the hospital. He stood beside my bed without touching me. "They found your passport in Vanessa's suitcase," he said. I nodded. "They found copies of your tax records in Robert's office." I nodded again. He swallowed. "There is something else." I waited. Daniel told me that the investigators had found a draft petition on Vanessa's laptop. It requested an emergency mental health evaluation for me. The document claimed I had become paranoid, violent, and financially reckless during pregnancy. If the family accepted the accusation of theft, Vanessa planned to use my panic as proof that I was unstable. She had also prepared a request asking the court to appoint Daniel as temporary controller of my personal finances. Daniel looked sick as he said it. She wanted me to sign it tomorrow. That was the deepest betrayal. Not because Vanessa wrote the petition, because she believed Daniel might sign it, and if I was honest, I believed that too. "I need to leave," I said. He looked around the hospital room. "You are safe here." "I mean leave you." The words hung between us. Daniel sat slowly. "I came home." "You came home early by accident." He flinched. "You saw the bruises because you walked through the door." "But I had been telling you something was wrong for weeks." "I know." "No, Daniel. You know now. That is different." He did not defend himself. For the first time, he listened without trying to repair the moment. I told him I would move into a furnished apartment near the hospital. Rosa had agreed to stay with me for the first few days. My attorney would arrange access to our joint accounts and personal documents. Daniel asked whether he could come to appointments. "When I invite you." He nodded. "Will you let me try to fix this?" "You cannot fix what Vanessa did." "What about what I did?" I looked at him for a long moment. "That depends on whether you call it a mistake or a choice." He understood. Ignoring me had not been an accident. He had repeatedly chosen comfort over concern. He had chosen the version of events that allowed him to keep working, keep trusting his sister, and keep believing his home was peaceful. I left the hospital the next morning. Daniel drove behind us, but he did not enter the apartment. For the first time in 5 weeks, I held my own keys. For the first time in my marriage, I opened a bank account in my name alone. And for the first time since Vanessa moved in, I slept with the bedroom door unlocked. The investigation lasted 4 months. By then, my daughter, Lily, had been born healthy. She arrived 3 weeks early, furious at the world and loud enough to make every nurse laugh. Daniel was there because I invited him. He held my hand during labor, but he never asked me to promise that everything between us would be fine. That mattered. He had started therapy. He resigned temporarily from the company presidency, while an independent committee reviewed the fraud. He gave investigators every file they requested, even when it damaged the Bennett family's reputation. Most importantly, he stopped protecting people from the consequences of their choices. The bank records showed that Bluebriar Strategies had received $187,500. Vanessa used part of the money to pay personal debts, rent a luxury apartment in Washington, and purchase jewelry she planned to hide with a friend. Robert had created the false security token, approved the invoices, and altered internal audit schedules. They had also prepared another, 240 Zalozin in payments that had not yet been released. The prosecutor offered Vanessa a plea agreement in exchange for full cooperation. She accepted. Robert refused and went to trial. But criminal punishment was only part of the ending. The real revenge happened at the annual shareholder meeting. Robert had spent his entire life believing the company belonged to the Bennett bloodline. He believed outsiders could work for the family, marry into the family, or serve the family. But they could never control it. He was wrong. Daniel's father had included a morality clause in the voting trust. Any beneficiary who committed fraud against the company could lose voting rights permanently. After Robert's conviction, his shares moved into independent control. Vanessa's distributions were suspended under the same clause. The independent trustees then reviewed Daniel's temporary resignation and the evidence he had provided. They offered him a path back as president, but with strict oversight. Daniel accepted every condition. Then he did something no one expected. He nominated me for the company's new compliance committee. I declined. The room seemed surprised. Daniel did not. I had spent years helping the Bennett family protect its business, while they treated my skills like a useful hobby. I did not want a seat they offered only after nearly destroying me. Instead, I started my own forensic accounting firm. Rosa became my first office manager. Within 6 months, we had contracts with 3 family-owned companies that wanted to prevent exactly what happened to us. The work paid well, but the best part was that my name appeared on the door. Not Daniel's name, not Vanessa's version of my name. Mine, Claire Morgan Forensic Services. I returned to my maiden name professionally even before I decided what to do about my marriage. Vanessa sent me 2 letters from jail. The first blamed Robert. The second blamed Daniel. Neither letter apologized to me. I returned both unopened. Robert's attorneys appealed his conviction, but the civil case moved forward. The company recovered most of the stolen funds through asset seizure and insurance. The luxury apartment deposit was returned. The jewelry was sold. The remaining debt became Vanessa and Robert's responsibility. Then my attorney discovered the final piece. The false company created in my name had caused serious damage to my credit and professional reputation. Because Vanessa and Robert used my identity, I was entitled to pursue a separate civil claim. They expected me to settle quietly. The Bennett family attorney suggested a private payment and a confidentiality agreement. I refused. I wanted the court record. I wanted every forged document, every false invoice, every recording, and every photograph entered into a public file. Vanessa had planned to make me confess to a crime I did not commit. My revenge was making sure the truth carried her real name. At the civil hearing, Vanessa appeared by video. Robert sat beside his attorney. Daniel sat behind me, not with his family. My lawyer presented the timeline. The stolen identity documents, the canceled medical appointment, the security token, the recordings, the draft mental health petition, and finally, the photographs of my bruises. Vanessa looked away. The judge did not. The court awarded damages, legal fees, and a permanent order preventing either of them from contacting me directly. The company's insurer paid part of the judgment. Robert's remaining non-protected assets were attached. Vanessa lost the trust income she had treated like a birthright. Outside the courthouse, a reporter asked whether I felt satisfied. I looked at Daniel, who was holding Lily beneath a small yellow blanket. Then I looked at the courthouse doors. Satisfaction is not the same as healing, I said. But truth is a good place to begin. Daniel and I did not return to the old house. He sold it. Too many rooms carried memories of locked doors and whispered threats. We bought 2 smaller homes 5 minutes apart. For a year, we lived separately. He came to see Lily on a schedule we agreed upon. He attended therapy. He never asked me to forgive Vanessa. He never told me to forget for the sake of the family. And he never again answered my fear with an easier explanation. On Lily's first birthday, we sat together in my backyard while she destroyed a small cake with both hands. Daniel watched her laugh. Then he said, "I used to think being a good husband meant providing everything." I waited. He continued. "But I provided a house and still let you become trapped inside it." That was the first apology that felt complete. Not because it was dramatic. Because it named what he had done. I did not move back in with him that day. I did not promise a perfect future. But I agreed to start marriage counseling. Slowly, we built something new. Not the marriage we had before. That marriage had depended on my silence and his assumptions. The new one required questions, boundaries, separate keys, separate accounts, and the courage to believe discomfort before it became evidence. 2 years after the day Daniel opened the front door, I found the green dress in a sealed box from the prosecutor's office. It had been held as evidence. I took it outside. For a moment, I remembered Vanessa's fingers on my arm. 7 bruises. 6 hidden by fabric, 1 hidden by my hair. She had believed that if no one saw the marks, no one would believe the pain. I cut the dress into long strips. Then I used the fabric to tie young trees in my backyard to wooden supports. Daniel watched from the porch. "What are those?" he asked. "Lily's trees." I had planted one for every bruise Vanessa counted. 7 young dogwoods. They were small then, but their roots were already taking hold. Years from now, they would shade the yard where my daughter played. That was the final thing Vanessa never understood. She thought revenge meant destroying someone the way they tried to destroy you. But my revenge was different. I kept my name. I kept my career. I kept my daughter safe. And I made the truth grow in the exact place where they expected my silence. The memorable ending is this. They counted my bruises because they thought pain was evidence of weakness. I counted the trees because survival was evidence that they had failed.